I think I've always been interested in people's inner life, and so as a psychiatrist, I explore that in order to help people, in order to help them get over whatever it is that's causing them pain, And in sculpture, I try to satisfy myself in the sense, form some connection to people by doing sculptures of them, tell stories in some way that adds something to the world. It's hard to say exactly. But at Louise Bourgeois, I remember I used to go to her salons. She'd have these salons every Sunday at 3, and anybody can come and bring their art. And I remember her saying once that if she was satisfied with the world as it is, she wouldn't have become a sculptor. So I think about that, and there's something to that. And the idea being that the sculptor has to take his or her inner life and make it visible so that other people can connect to it. So it's making material things, but the material things are really kind of spiritual things and emblems of the invisible. So something like that. I do them on the train. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on how long the ride is. So sometimes an attitude, what I seem to glean from the person as to their mood or their personality. Sometimes I look at the sculpture, I remember being there on the train with the person in front of me, but often the memories fade after a couple of months. This was a guy who kind of looked like he was homeless. I don't remember exactly, but he was sort of half asleep. He was sitting in a corner. These were two lovers on the train. This was early on Sunday morning, and they were sitting on a bench near the conductor's door, so at the end of the train car, and she was sleeping with her head on his shoulder. And I kind of imagined they were there all night, but I don't know. I mean, this guy had an interesting hairdo. He actually had a rose out of hair on his forehead, and everything else was shaved off. So I liked his hair.
He did a show before with miniature heads. It was here last year. He showed the little ones, and it was a whole display of faces from his trips in the subway. All these different characters and the way he captured their moods. They were sleeping, some of them, they were serious, some were smiling, and that's pretty much the exploration that he transferred to the big sculptures that he's showing in the park.
On Elmhurst Avenue, she was a Bengali woman, and it was winter, and she was wearing a shawl. And she was probably, going home. This one is in the park. That was just a woman, sort of a happy-looking woman, in the winter, wearing a very large fake fur collar, like on a parka, and her hair was wound up in this colorful, thick, like tube. But I remember being struck by how contented and how sort of at peace she looked with herself, and I think that's why I did the sculpture.
I mean, he also has another profession. He works at the hospital, and he explores depression, how they cope with life. You can see it, how their feelings are projected in their faces and their expressions, and I think it's interesting because artists are always exploring that. He's really good at using art to explore something that this other profession that he has and find answers to those questions. It's not just copying a face in the subway, it's like going beyond that, it's creating, it's trying to get the soul, understand what's behind the face.